Just before we get into this video, guys, if you want to follow me on social media, on Twitter and Instagram, the links are here. And if you also want to support me on Patreon as well and help out my channel, that would be absolutely awesome as well. But let's get on with the video. Hey guys, it is Wingy here and welcome to the start of what I hope is a brand new series on my channel. Now, I mentioned on Twitter the other day that I'm going to be starting to review different comic books because I've been getting into them again. For the last few weeks or months or so, like, I've not really had, in terms of entertainment, something that I can really enjoy anymore. Certain TV shows, such as Doctor Who, I don't enjoy the same way that I once did. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has obviously more or less ended. I know it's carrying on, but it just won't feel the same anymore. And there's not really many TV shows or other movies that I'm overly fussed by, so I was thinking, what can keep me entertained? And then I thought, comic books. I've got a load of them that I haven't read yet, and I may as well read them, because I travel a lot. Train Wi-Fi and bus Wi-Fi is shit. So I thought, you know what, instead of passing the time by trying to just connect to the Wi-Fi or whatever, or just waste data, I may as well read. And it's reignited a bit of a passion for me. So we are going to be reviewing every now and again, because obviously it takes time to read a graphic novel and they cost money to buy as well. So I don't know how frequent this series is going to be, but I'm just going to be basically reviewing different graphic novels and comic books that I read. Hopefully it might encourage you guys to check out some of these stories if you haven't already, or maybe even start reading comics for the first time. And it means that now finally I can live up to the media in my name, because I've spoken TV, I've spoken movies, I've spoken video games, now we're doing comics. So without further ado, let's get into this first one then. Now, from the title and thumbnail, you'll know exactly which story this is. And that is the 6-part story, Green Arrow Year 1 by DC Comics. Why do they call it DC Comics when DC literally stands for Detective Comics? So it's Detective Comics Comics. So Green Arrow Year 1 is basically a retelling or an alternative origin story for the Green Arrow. Everybody knows Green Arrow nowadays. He was made famous by the TV show Arrow, where he's portrayed by Stephen Amell. However, people will know him as well from the Justice League cartoon and his appearances in Smallville. But when that comic came out in, I think, 2006, 2007, he wasn't really on people's radars as much. People didn't really know too much about Green Arrow. People didn't really care about Green Arrow. Me, I fucking love Green Arrow. He is one of my favourite superheroes. So to read this, which in my opinion, and I know for a lot of people as well, is the definitive Green Arrow origin story, it was a hell of a lot of fun. Now, speaking of the TV show Arrow, if you're a fan of that show and you don't read comic books and you're looking for something to get you into comics, or you want to read a decent Green Arrow story, go for that one. I will say this right from the get-go, a lot of Arrow, particularly the early stuff with the flashbacks, is heavily influenced by this story. In fact, reading it earlier, there was moments where I was like, yeah, that happens in Arrow, that character appears in Arrow. And the best thing about it is that it's only a 6-part series. So this entire graphic novel here, it's not that big at all. It's literally 6 issues put together, which realistically isn't that long. So if you were worried about getting into comics and being overwhelmed and thinking, oh well, do I need to read other things to fully get it? Is it going to be really long? Is it going to be really tedious? Nope, this one isn't. This is a really good starting point for not just Green Arrow stuff, but I would say DC in general. So the basic premise of this, if you didn't really know much about Green Arrow, is Oliver Queen is a billionaire. He's a bit of an arsehole. He doesn't really do anything with his life that's meaningful. He's a bit of an adrenaline junkie. He's a womanizer. He drinks all the time. He has literally everything he possibly could in the world at his disposal, but he just doesn't feel complete. He doesn't really feel fulfilled with his life. He doesn't really feel alive until, through circumstances that I will not explain because it is a spoiler and I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't read it, he ends up stranded on a desert island with literally nothing. And I mean literally nothing. Like, there is nobody on this island that he's aware of. There's no clean water, there's no electricity. He has to fend for himself now. This jumped up little rich kid has to figure out how to survive. Now again, you would have seen that in the TV show, but the difference is here, in the show, you have characters like Shadow and characters like Slade Wilson who will help Oliver through his journey, who will teach him the ways, you know, show him how to use a bow, how to make a fire, how to kill an animal, things like that, how to hunt. Whereas in this, he's totally by himself and he's totally isolated, and I've got to admit, I prefer the comic book version purely for that reason. You see Oliver grow as a character on his own merits. You don't have him taught everything and handed everything, because then he doesn't really learn a lesson. If he's still handed something like he is in the show, then how can that character possibly grow? Because it doesn't really feel the same as him fending for himself and learning things by himself. Admittedly, some of the survival stuff in this story is very rushed. Again though, it is only a 6-part series, so they can't really do everything, but I do wish it was like 1, 2, 3 maybe issues longer so they could properly flesh out some of those moments. But I mean, you still see him learn how to hunt, you see him build his own bow and build his own arrows, and you see him become incredibly skilled as not just an archer, but just as a survivor. However, later on in the story, he discovers that he is not alone on this island. He's actually stumbled into something that is much bigger than he ever anticipated. Again, I'm trying to be as vague as possible because I don't want to spoil it. But when he gets wrapped up in this thing, he then realizes that he needs to be selfless for once in his life, and he needs to actually help people. And so the latter half of this book is so action-packed, and there's so many really cool moments and so many little callbacks to what people know Green Arrow for, like trick arrows, for example. You can really tell that he's not just a guy with a bow and arrow, like he is a hunter. And that really comes across with the way that he picks off some of his enemies in this. It is very much a Robin Hood story. He is trying to take from the rich and help the poor, and Robin Hood is referenced a lot in this story. You know, it's not subtly done, it is very on the nose, and to be honest, I quite like that. I like the fact that it's acknowledging that Green Arrow was inspired by Robin Hood, and they're not shy of admitting that. In fact, towards the beginning of the book, Oliver Queen actually says how much he idolizes Robin Hood. Something happens towards the beginning of the book that is brought back later on towards the end of the book as kind of like a nice full circle thing, and it's very Robin Hood heavy. Some people might like that, some people might not. I personally quite liked it. The artwork in this is really, really good as well. You know, it's not full of dialogue because, let's be fair, he's by himself on an island, so he's not speaking out loud. The majority of this, Oliver is talking to himself in his head. We're hearing his thoughts. He's narrating the entire story. And so because it isn't so dialogue heavy, in quite a few places you get these beautiful full pages of these gorgeous images of the island, or Oliver hunting, or fighting his enemies, or things exploding and things like that, and it is just beautifully drawn. But also, because it isn't that dialogue heavy, it's also really easy to follow. So again, if you are new to comics, that's another plus for you. It's also really witty in a lot of places. I mean, Green Arrow is a witty character anyway. If you watch the show Arrow, then you probably wouldn't get that, because Stephen Amell's portrayal of Oliver Queen isn't really that witty or humorous, or at least in comparison to the comic book version. Like, this is still a guy who is incredibly funny, even though he's going through something that is probably gonna kill him. Not many people survive a desert island by themselves, but there are genuinely some laugh out loud moments and some laugh out loud quips that Oliver comes out with in this, and it just makes the story not as dark as it probably could be. Interpret that how you will. Some people might think that that's a bad thing. I personally quite liked it. I quite liked that even in some of the darker and more serious moments, we do have a bit of lightheartedness. I love this book. I really, really love this book. So if you are able to get it, or if you fancy reading a Green Arrow story, then this is the one for you. It is well worth the read. I mean, like I say, I travel a lot, so reading stuff like this helps me just pass the time, and if you're the same, start with this one. This is a really, really good one. Overall, I would say that this is a 9 out of 10. I know it sounds cliche, but it is a real page turner. The last page in this book as well, really, really cool. It's kind of predictable when you read the story what's coming, but when you see that last panel, it's a proper like, yes moment, and I love it. So that is Green Arrow Year 1. In the comments below, guys, let me know, have you read this story? If you have, what did you think about it? And in fact, actually, tell me what your first comic book story experience was. Like, what was the first story that you read? Whatever it is, let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like on it, subscribe for more, because we will be doing more of these. Like I say, I don't know how frequent they're going to be. It's mostly going to be like Marvel and DC, but there will be some other things in there as well. Social media and Patreon links will be in the description below, so if you'd follow me on any of those things, then I would absolutely love you forever. But until next time, guys, you take care of yourselves. Goodbye. The illustrator of this is called Jock. Just Jock. Okay. Is he French?